Hey, what's up, everybody? This is my Phantasmal Lightning Tendrils Ignite Explodey build. This isn't going to be a complete build guide or anything. I just wanted to show you guys what I've been doing to be able to clear maps really quickly on a pretty reasonable budget. And this might be something that I actually would just recommend to try out if you're interested. It's going to be lower damage than the other Ignite builds that are out there right now, right? Like Rutu's Ignite Vortex is really insane for scaling into really big boss damage. You can play Lightning Conduit if you just want the free really high damage and scaling into like 30, 40, 50 million DPS. When you get to like really high investment. This is a nice little comfy build that is just kind of funky and off meta, that's taking advantage of some unique things that I was inspired by. You know, for 5 to 10 divines, you can be clearing T16 maps, killing the regular bosses in the game pretty comfortably. And I'm pretty happy with where I took it. It did require me to flex my crafting skills a little bit, and I'll talk a little bit about every piece of gear that I have here. But like I said, this isn't a complete build guide. This will be just a build overview to inspire people, just show what you can do if you want to be a little creative. So the key with this build is that we are building around Phantasmal Lightning Tendrils. As you can see with the alternate Phantasmal quality, it gets a very large more damage multiplier for the 4th pulse. So when you channel Lightning Tendrils, every X amount of time when it's ticking. So as you can see, unbuffed every 0.19 seconds for me. So it's instantly casting at the beginning. So roughly about 0.6 seconds after I press the button, it will do the bigger spell cast. That is a 475% more damage multiplier. Now you can see that part of the alternate quality does have the downside of dealing less damage by default, but since we are building around Ignite, specifically with Shaper Flames, we only care about that single big Ignite, and all of the smaller Ignites will just get ignored. So as long as we channel for 0.6 seconds, we want to get our infused channeling going and hit them with the Phantasmal Lightning Tendrils that has 475% more damage. We can kick off pretty sizable Ignites for like a pretty silly little skill here. As you can see with my current configuration, I am at 7.4 million Ignite DPS and 10.5 million combined DPS. That's because Lightning Tendrils itself is still hitting pretty hard, and we're going for some pretty big effect of non-damaging ailments. We got Breath of Lightning here, and we also have the Mastery for 40% here. Not to mention with Awakened Unbound Ailment support, we have a ton of effect of non-damaging ailments, so we can reliably hit very chunky shocks on even the big bosses in the game. So that just means that no matter what type of damage that we're doing, the on-hit effect or the Ignite, it's pretty chunky, and it just feels really solid. For our single target, you've seen this definitely in the Lightning Conduit builds, we can leverage the Singularity, which just got buffed. It gives us 100% increased damage with hits and ailments. It hinders the nearby enemies, reduce mana cost of skills, increase cast time, which is really nice actually. Brings it down to 0.16 seconds. Times 3, it takes almost 0.1 seconds entirely off of us getting that Phantasmal proc. And so this is just really nice for our single target. However, as you've seen, I have been taking advantage of the explosion of the Obliteration. Now, Obliteration does almost nothing for us for the single target. Yeah, the increased spell damage implicit does a little bit for the on-hit, but increased spell damage does not affect the Ignites whatsoever. However, we are hitting hard enough. There is enough damage in this build that it just doesn't matter. Not to mention that the explosions, since we have Shaper of Flames and all damage types, including the chaos damage from Obliteration explosions, will also kick off really big Ignites. That actually makes farming essences really easy, because essences will spawn with a bunch of monsters around it, and if one of those monsters has a Profane Bloom, you will kick off a gigantic Ignite, basically reminiscent of like a Vol Detonate Dead explosion, which allows us to have insane clear when we're going through the map. On top of that, we're also using Herald of Ash, because we're scaling so much Ignite, burning damage, fire damage, and AoE. Herald of Ash actually has really good synergy with the Obliteration explosions, really giving us some of the best clear that you can experience with a spell in the game. This is not build specific. Basically, any Ignite build in the game, toss an Obliteration in there, and Celestial Herald of Ash, that's very important. You need those aesthetics. That will just lead to incredibly good clear that, like, if you're playing anything with Ignite right now and you just want better clear, if you can fit this in, I do strongly recommend it. I have a flammability on hit Sapphire Ring here. I bought this for 50 chaos early on in the league. You can just go for a Warlord ring that has flammability on the suffix. It can actually be a stronger flammability. But what this allowed me to do is craft with an Essence of Delirium to also get that damage over time multiplier and hit some really nice mods in addition to that. So absolutely not necessary with the flammability on hit ring. I have this really nice Kalandra ring right here that has +2 level of all skill gems. You can go for a +1/+1. Ashes of Stars is probably just better in this build. at least offensively. But I was able to get this without spending too much. And so I'm just leveraging this. Absolutely not necessary to have something like this for the build. Other ring is just a life gain on hit with spells. Since we're hitting a lot with lightning tendrils as well, this actually gives us really, really good sustain. And then the key here is a Skin of the Lords with elemental equilibrium specifically. Since we are doing lightning damage on the initial hit, but the ignite is actually fire damage, we can leverage the fact that we don't have any added fire damage. I actually specifically have added cold damage here, but no added fire damage on the build. This will work with elemental equilibrium, giving us a minus 25 fire res exposure. On top of that, since we have Mastermind of Discord, that's actually minus 50 to fire res, which makes our ignites much, much stronger. I bought this for 80 chaos this morning. I was previously using a +1 curse frenzy charge on hit, but this is just like an example of what you would want to be going for. Another option here is you can replace Awaken Unbound Ailments with Empower, and so you could go for 2 red, 3 blue, and 1 green as well, if these colors don't line up well for you. Other than that, I have a pair of boots that have ignites deal faster and increase action speed, and then a pair of gloves with spell suppression and fire damage over time multiplier. Since we have elemental equilibrium, and since the rework, the way that it works is actually an exposure, we don't have to go for exposure on our gloves or from any other source, which is very handy. For auras, there's actually a ton of flexibility here. This is just customize it to your heart's content. What I usually use is Herald of Ash, Clarity, Determination, and actually Grace here. But if you want to just do 21% more damage, at least on your ignites, Malevolence is really huge for your single target. That's absolutely up to your own preferences. And if you don't need those huge explosions, drop Herald of Ash and just put in Tempest Shield to get some spell block, which is really good. The other key here is I am using a Ezomite Tower Shield that I crafted that has increased damage per 1% chance to block attack damage. And since I am using Glancing Blows, I am actually attack damage capped, which gives me 75% increased damage while also being able to take advantage of a full life and armor shield, which is pretty sick. I also have Recover Life on block and just max block straight from the shield because I have T1 block on the suffix there. So this is just a really cool way that you can leverage like unique rare mods to boost your defenses in kind of a clever way. But I am aiming for max spell suppression. Unfortunately, I only have 54% spell suppression at the moment. Because of Glancing Blows, spell block is just worse than spell suppression in every single way, because you can only cap out at 75%, and then you're taking 65% of that instead of 50 like spell suppression. So Glancing Blows actually makes spell block like kind of bad, but just as an additional layer in front of spell suppression to just not take some of the damage in the first place, spell block can actually be really nice. Feel free to toss in Tempest Shield. You also get Shock Immune if you want to get that. For juicing my damage a little bit in addition, we're using an Arcanist brand with Anomalous Flame Surge, 10% chance to scorch enemies. Scorch is just even less elemental resistances. And then Divergent Purifying Flame for Consecrated Ground, making them take 5% increased damage. This will go up significantly. I believe it goes to 12% with an Ashes of the Stars. So like I said, Ashes will just be even more damage if you wanted to take this build further. And then we have Culling Strike here as well. Now the Culling Strike is kind of like low value because the Arcanist brand doesn't trigger that often, but it is just nice to get those occasional calls to kind of just like knock the monsters off right away. We're also using Flame Dash with Combustion here. Since we don't care about spell damage at all because we're pushing the Ignite, we don't care about Arcane Surge. Arcane Surge does not help our ignites. We actually don't use that, and we're using Combustion here for an additional minus 10 fire res on the enemies. So you can see the theme here. We have a lot of increased damage taken, fire damage taken. We have something around minus 100 fire res to the monster. So I'm using this Watcher's Eye that I bought very early on that has flat physical damage and 1,000 armor. You could go for Malevolence, you could go for grace-based ones, anything based on the auras that you're doing. I'm still using this one. It's just nice for a lot of physical damage reduction, makes the build a lot comfier to play. And then we're using a single cluster jewel here that has Sadist. This is the key. The only one that we really care about here is Sadist. I very purposely have a little bit of spell damage here on my jewel. I would actually want a little bit more because my chills are not super consistent. But since we are always shocking and igniting, and we're chilling pretty reasonably, Sadist alone is 60% increased elemental damage, which is really, really good. I ended up rolling Widespread Destruction and Prismatic Heart. These are not best in slot whatsoever. There's a lot of alternative options that you can look at, but these are just what I hit. That's what I'm going with. Really big key on this build is Fan the Flames. You can go for Ignites Propagate on your gloves, which is totally fine if you want to do that. But I have Fan the Flames here, which just allows your Ignites to propagate. Really good for clearing the screen. Then I have Burning Bright here. It's just what I hit with Fan the Flames. It's like whatever. But AoE is really nice for just a bigger tendies. Wasting Affliction is best in slot here. Damaging Ailments deal damage faster. The faster that Ignite damage is going, it's basically just a more damage multiplier, the better. And then, yeah, rest of the passive tree, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. All of my other jewels are just stats and res, nothing special whatsoever. And then the playstyle is just, you know, walk around, we're shield charging, we're flame dashing, just lightning tendies, get some really nice explosions. Weapon swap for Singularity if you're fighting like a boss. You really don't even need it for map bosses. We do enough damage for that. And yeah, very happy with this build. It's not like hey, this is a life-changing build, but it's been a very interesting challenge, interesting puzzle, and I've had a lot of fun putting it together. I'm probably going to take this build to getting as close to my 40 out of 40 as possible. I don't think I'm going to like min-max it. I think it could kill some Ubers if I tried really, really hard. I'm happy with looking at this as just like a regular mapping and early boss build. This is something you could consider putting together for just 5 to 10 divines, something that's just kind of like fun, a little off meta, and I've really been enjoying the challenge with putting it together. I'm going to go get ready for the stream, and I'll see y'all tomorrow. Goodbye.